So thank you for the attendance, and I believe we can start the demo. And I will share my screen now. As usual, we are starting from the MSI roadmap. And the same as on the previous week, during the current week, we were working on two stories. The first one devoted for reservation API and append-only reservation service. And another one is new indexation for inventory. In the scope of that story, we wanted to introduce new index for the inventory, and that index supposed to create stock tables per each stock. The stock is, in our case, is a virtual aggregation, and based on the sources to stock assignments, we would like to calculate the aggregations for the stock items and save them to the newly created index tables. So we will show the results of the indexation story. So here we can see the technical document for this story, and as a result we wanted to achieve. So here we introduce new meaning for the indexation process as dimension, and in our case dimension is a stock ID, because for each stock ID we will create a dedicated table. So for example, if we will have 5 different stocks, we will end up with creating 5 different tables, and each of the table will hold just the data for this particular stock. This is very useful and helpful for the horizontal scalability when we have quite a lot of different dimensions and we have quite a lot of data, and the data would be spread over many indexes. So at the time of working with the data, for example, on a front end querying the data, we will actually just, based on the current scope, we will resolve a request to some particular table and just make a query to this particular table. So for example, if we will have a lot of data, each particular index will hold just the data for the dedicated scope. So we will not overwhelm our index with unneeded data for each particular scope. So this is very handy for the from the scalability point of view. And the same approach we actually use for the full text index. And we will show that on a current demo. So I believe we I can give a word to Valery, who will continue the demo, and so I'm stop sharing.
I share my screen. Okay.
So what we actually want to present on a current demo, so we will create several physical stores. So we will create 3 different physical stores. We will create a brick and mortar store and 2 warehouses. One of that warehouses would be located in Europe, and 2 others would be located in United States. After that, we will create 2 different stocks. For the first stock would be dedicated just for Europe market, and that stock would be assigned the only physical source, so the only physical U warehouse. And for the second stock would be international, so all the physical sources would be assigned to that stock. And we will create a product and assign a quantity. So now Valery creating US brick and mortar.
You can see error. It was because I left from previous page before page was loaded. This page located to this. So
it's not a stock, Valery, it's a source.
Source. And last 7G. And last stock source.
So that's, you can call it warehouse. Okay.
Okay. 1 minute. And save and close.
Yeah, so for now we created 3 different sources, 2 of which are located in the United States and 1 is located in Europe, in France. So here you can see that on a grid.
Next, I'm going to create stocks aggregations. For example, global stock for all our sources.
So the global stock has an assignment, so all the sources are assigned to this global stock.
And next, stock for only US.
Only Europe.
No, only Europe. Stock. So we have a relation one-to-many in and one-to-one.
So now let's create an SKU and specify some quantity for that SKU on the different sources. So we assign that SKU to all the sources we have and provide different quantity for all of the sources. So on the first source, we have this SKU in amount of 10 items. On the second one, we have an amount of 20 items. And on the third one, we have it in amount of 30 items. So according to our, now we will make a reindexation and we'll see how after the reindexation, what the amount would be in our stock tables. So based on our mapping, you can already proceed with reindexation.
I show that now index table are missed and run indexation. Index has been built and we can see result in our GB. We can see the true table occur. Oops. How to move this? On the first stock, global stock, we have sum of quantity from all sources.
Yeah, as you remember, the quantities were 10, 20, and 30. So summing up altogether, we end up with a 60 in total. And that's the quantity of the SQ1 product on a stock 1 for the global stock. And now we will see.
It is quantity on Europe warehouse.
Yeah. So on a second stock, we have just quantity 30 because the second stock assigned just to the only source which represents the U warehouse. Now we will try to make some trick, and we will update quantity of the product SQ1 on the source 3, not on the source 3, yeah. And let's make it like some decimal quantity, like 5.5, for example, yeah. And save our changes. And after that, launch reindex one more time. So we need to get both stock quantities for the stock 1 and the stock 2 to be updated after this change, because the source 1 is assigned to both stocks.
Global stock. Ten plus 20 plus 5 and 5. And on Europe stock, we have decimal quantity.
Yeah. So looks like we reindexation works now. For now, we still need some work to finish. The first task we have regarding that is to support statuses, because for now we don't support statuses. If the source item has a status out of stock, we still make an aggregation, and we need to fix that out. And also we need to add functionality of stock sources disabling, and based on that flag, if the source is disabled, also not take the amount of the product into account during the reindexation process. And the third task we need to finish is the index. We need to notify that index should be launched, so that invalidate the index data when we proceed with some events. Because for now you need to do it manually, and there is no any flag saying that the index is not valid anymore. But currently our story could be considered like as finished. So I believe we can fix it in our roadmap we can cross it in our roadmap. Like this one and this one. And another story was about introduce reservation API. So we have a pull request from Alessandra regarding that story, and we had a discussion over this pull request. So we are not ready to merge it, but it's like almost ready. I don't know if Alessandra, you have any open question. We can discuss it right now.
I only have to check. I have the issue regarding the object manager instantiation of reservation, because I forgot to write down that I implemented the constructor with as you indicate here, but the problem is that the function that try to resolve the arguments still searches for indexes that are different. So maybe I can delve a bit more in that. If we use exactly in this point, if you use this kind of notation using the stock ID, for example, which has an underscore, the function that tries to resolve the argument while instantiating class will search for an index that's called stock ID without the underscore. And in my array, I will have the index with the underscore. So this is the main issue, even using the constructor. So it doesn't use the reflection. It doesn't use this reflection to see how the parameter is named, but it uses the key that we pass in the arguments. So here I should pass stock ID without the underscore. So we have to figure out if we have to map these keys. I really won't like to use to duplicate the keys here. So maybe we can figure out how to manage to do this thing without using different keys and without being forced to use keys with camel case.
Okay, so
so even if I use the constructor, exactly. This is how it expects keys for the argument.
Yeah. So actually, that's the trick, because I believe in your constructor, you have like this one, like
no, it doesn't. It doesn't seem to use reflection to find the proper key. It really uses the key that you use in the arguments array. And in our case, some keys have underscore, and that causes the issue. So one idea could be that of using a mapping function, or maybe a function that converts keys with underscore to camel case, just to continue using the reservation interface constants. I don't know if you like this idea, or it's something that violates some guidelines, some best practices. So we probably need to work on this. Because I dealt with debugger into the function that resolves the argument, and
now the stock ID constant. And now stock ID constant in reservation interface is represent.
Yes, it is the underscore in it.
Currently, I don't understand why the consts have some underscore in it, but it can be a naming issue. Yeah. Okay. And okay, it's
because Yeah, these are also used to create columns in tables, and the convention, as far as I know, is that in table names we use underscore to separate words. But yes, this is a naming issue, and I'm not sure I'm able to solve this thing without your help.
You definitely, there is like different conventions. So we have like one convention for constant values with an underscore, but our mapper actually will try to map stock ID with underscore to the stock ID without, with a camel case. And in our PHP code, we have a agreement to use variables in a camel case.
Yeah.
So what I propose to do right now is just to fix the constant names here, to get rid of the underscore and use the camel case here.
Okay. As a
to stay constant with underscore for GB tables, and for quick fix use instead of constant camel case.
So actually, that was a proposal from Alessandra regarding whether we need to
Igor, also some solution for it. It's not a problem to have some mapper function in there that you're defining the consts 2 times for the different namings, and you will have a map function from this const type to this const type, or use different consts for the for the correct naming convention.
I don't think that we need to introduce new constants. So introducing, as more contracts we will introduce, we need so the more problems we will have in future, because we need to keep all the contracts updated. And actually introducing 2 constants for the same thing will actually violate the single responsibility principle. Because, for example, if we will need to change the value of the stock ID to the, for example, like stock identity, we need to change the values of 2 constants, but not 1 in future. So that we will introduce some problems. So here, like, I'm more agree with Alessandra, who proposed to introduce a service which will convert the data from the underscore notation to camel case notation. And the only problem that we need to put this service somewhere. And for now, we try not to introduce new services to the framework. So we're trying to be as independent as possible. And I'm not sure that we already have that service in the framework. So,
and if I can add, probably, I'm not sure, but probably ideal solution would be that of giving the responsibility to do the right mapping to the function that performs the resolve argument. That is, I think, in the...
It's in Object Manager Factory.
Yes, no, it's in abstract factor. Yes, it's the resolve argument method. So probably it could be something that can be done there, because that the responsibility of resolving the argument is in that function, but it's in the core and we can't work on that. So
actually, that could introduce backward incompatibility, because that's another naming. And if there is already it's a basic framework code which has like mapping 1-to-1 between the array case of parameters, so we can potentially break some extension. So what I propose to do is to introduce a service which will accept this array, and the service is looking through the keys of that array and make a conversion from the from the underscore notation to a camel case, and return an array with the camel case notation for keys. And let's put that service in our module, in the inventory module, and we'll just use that service here before passing the data into the argument.
Okay.
It sounds good for me because then we can move this service later to the core, and we also need to move some functionality later to the core from the MSI module, because also we need change the switching process, and yeah, it will be helpful for core developers or future developing in the core.
Yeah, so okay, so let's make it as an independent service. And if it would be an independent service, it would be quite easily to move it to the framework in future potentially. And yeah. Are there any other open questions regarding that stuff? So I believe that was probably the trickiest part here.
Okay, I agree.
And
the only remaining doubt I have is regarding the size of the column for the metadata, since we said that 255 is too small, but 64K is too large. So
I'm actually even afraid of not the size of the variable char data type, but because like we have a gap, and actually it's a bug in Magenta. Yeah. So if we will use as big length of the field for MySQL, we'll just end up with creating a text field, text data type, and the text data type is not very efficient in MySQL. Yeah. So I'm just because potentially the reservation table could be pretty heavy loaded, and we will like add quite a lot of data there. So I don't want to introduce a text field which could potentially just slow down the performance of reservation operations.
Okay, so so we have to switch to the 255, or
yeah. What I propose to do right now is to switch to the 255, and we can leave at to doing code. So I will create a GitHub issue regarding fixing that functionality. So maybe somebody from community will take it, and if that would be fixed, we can just bump the length of the field for the MySQL.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and one more thing to be added regarding this pull request. So here we're trying to make all our domain entities, and in our case, the domain entity is a reservation. We're trying to make it as more agnostic from the Magento framework as possible, and we are trying to not inherit from the abstract model superclass, and to be just like following the DDD best practices to make it agnostic to the underlying layer and the framework layer based on which it's built. So it's pretty new to Magento, and actually we don't have a similar example in a Magento framework because most of the entities are inherited from the abstract model. So here we are trying to make something that's not in Magenta code base yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, guys, are there any open questions?
I have different question because I think you are closing my my story, but we have 3 to-dos in this stories in this for the indexation. You will create a new story for it, and I can take it, or how is the plan?
I propose to create, and actually I will create 3 GitHub issues, and I will
Okay.
put on the board so anybody can take them. So you can continue work on that. So we just agreed to merge the pull request to the develop branch. So everybody, for example, Alessandro could merge it to his branch and resolve the conflicts, because I believe the next pull request which would be delivered to the main line would be pull request of Alexandra, who is working on reservation. So he already can have an opportunity to get the latest code from the develop branch. But none of us is blocked with taking those 3 issues. And after the creation, I will put them to the, I will share with this issue in our Slack channel.
Okay. Okay, then after the meeting, I take one of them or 2 of them and will fix it. And we also talk in the latest meeting or a previous meeting about some testing stories. I think it will be nice to have more test coverage for the MSI project, and it will be helpful to cover more of the components with integration or unit tests. It's what do you mean?
I propose, so for now we keep pretty modular architecture, and now our architecture is not really dependent on Magenta 2 framework stuff. So we are not we are not integrated to the catalog, for example. So we can cover our functionality independent from the catalog. That's why I propose to cover newly created code with the unit test as well as the web API functional, because most of the services we are going to provide will have the web API. So, for example, we already have the web API coverage for the source creation and the source management operation. We need to create additional services for the stock management. And I believe when the Alessandro pull request would be ready, the next story would be creation of the services which actually calculate the quantity based on the stock item plus all the reservation created for some particular amount of time. And when we will create the services, we can also cover them with the web API tests. So actually, in our case, web API will cover the whole user case. So it would be similar to integration test. So all the code involved in the, like, all the code would be covered with the test, and using this web API test, we can reproduce the user scenario, so the whole user scenario. So the idea is to have all user scenarios to be covered with some kind of test, whether this is integrational or web API or functional test. So I believe in our case, it's pretty good to have web API tests.
Okay. I mean, the question is, it's I take a feature or I make a quality some quality task for the project. I'm not sure what is the best for the project currently, because we have some technical to-dos or technical parts. They are uncovered currently, and I thinking about what is the best for the project to implement a new feature or cover old feature with some test coverage.
On next week, I'm going to work on all to-dos, so maybe it's better to pick up new feature or extend functionality, for example, for disabled source or indexation if
yeah, so I believe that we for now we have that 3 GitHub issue, which is the result of the story implementation, so we can take them and just finish, so that will make our code more cleaner. So because sometimes we need to fix our to-dos, make some refactoring, introduce some testing, because we can't just take new features, because that will accumulate our technical debt for future.
Yeah, this was my thinking about this. Okay.
Okay. So guys, if there are no any other question, probably we'll finish that meeting. And if you have any other questions which you're stuck with, just ping us or just ask that question in a Slack channel. So we would be we'll try to answer as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.